The complete works of Swami Vivekananda, Sages of India, Part 4. Coming down to later times, there have been many great world moving sages, great incarnations of whom there have been many, and according to the Bhagavata, they are also infinite in number, and those that are worshipped most in India are Rama and Krishna. Rama, the ancient ideal of the heroic ages, the embodiment of truth of morality, the ideal son, the ideal husband, the ideal father, and above all, the ideal king. This Rama has been presented before us by the great sage Valmiki. No language can be purer, none chaster, none more beautiful, and at which same time simpler than the language in which the great poet has depicted the life of Rama. And what to speak of Sita? You may exhaust the literature of the world that is past, and I may assure you that you will have to exhaust the literature of the world of the future before finding another Sita. Sita is unique. That character was depicted once and for all. There may have been several other Ramas perhaps, but never more than one Sita. She is the very type of the true Indian woman, for all the Indian ideals of a perfected woman have grown out of that one life of Sita. And here she stands these thousands of years, commanding the worship of every man, woman and child throughout the length and breadth of the land of Aryavrat. There she shall always be, this glorious Sita, purer than purity itself, all patience and all suffering, she who suffered that life of suffering without a murmur, she the ever chaste and ever pure wife, she the ideal of the people, the ideal of the gods, the great Sita, our national god, she must always remain. And every one of us knows her too well to require much delineation. All our mythology may vanish, even our Vedas may depart, and our Sanskrit language may vanish forever. But so long as there will be 5 Hindus living here, even if only speaking the most vulgar pathos, there will be the story of Sita present. Mark my words, Sita has gone into the very vitals of our race. She is there in the blood of every Hindu man and woman. We are all the children of Sita. Any attempt to modernize a woman, if it tries to take our woman away from the ideal of Sita, is immediately a failure, as we see every day. The women of India must grow and develop in the footprints of Sita, and that is the only way. The next is he who is worshipped in various forms, the favorite ideal of men as well as of women, the ideal of children as well as of grown-up men. I mean he whom the writer of the Bhagavata was not content to call an incarnation, but says, the other incarnations were but parts of the Lord. He, Krishna, was the Lord himself. And is it not strange that such adjectives are applied to him when we marvel at the many-sidedness of his character? He was the most wonderful sannyasi and the most wonderful householder in one. He had the most wonderful amount of rajas, the power, and was at the same time living in the midst of the most wonderful renunciation. Krishna can never be understood until you have studied the Gita. For he was the embodiment of his teaching. Every one of those incarnations came as a living illustration of what they came to preach. Krishna, the preacher of the Gita, was all his life the embodiment of that song celestial. He was a great illustration of non-attachment. He gave up his throne and never cares for it. He is the leader of India, at whose words kings come down from their thrones. Never wants to be a king. He is the simple Krishna, ever the same Krishna who played with the gopis. that most marvelous passage of his life, the most difficult to understand, and which none ought to attempt to understand until he has become chaste and pure. That most marvelous expansion of love, allegorized and expressed in the beautiful play at Vrindavan, which none can understand, but he who has become mad with love, drunk deep of the cup of love. Who can understand the theros of the lore of the gopis, the very ideal of love, love that wants nothing, love that does not even care for anything or for heaven, love that does not care for anything in the world or the world to come. And here, my friends, through this love of the gopis, has been found the only solution of the conflict between the personal and the impersonal God. We know how the personal God is the highest point of human life. We know that it is the philosophical to believe in the impersonal God, immanent in the universe, of whom everything is but a manifestation. At the same time, our souls hanker about something concrete, something which we want to grasp, at whose feet we can pour out our soul, and so on. The personal God is therefore the highest conception of human nature. We understand reason, yet reason stands aghast at such an idea. It is the same old question which you can find discussed in the Brahma Sutras, which you can find Draupadi discussing with Yudhishthir in the forest. And that is, if there is a personal God, all merciful, all powerful, then why is the hell of earth here? Why did he create this? He must be a partial God. There was no solution, and the only solution that can be found is what you read about the love of the gopis. They hated every adjective that was applied to Krishna. They did not care to know that he was the Lord of creation. They did not care to know that he was almighty. They did not care to know that he was omnipotent, and so forth. The only thing they understood was that he was infinite love. That was all. The gopis understood Krishna only as the Krishna of Vrindavan. He, the leader of the herd, was the king of kings. To them was the shepherd, and the shepherd forever. I do not want wealth, nor many people, nor do I want learning. No, not even do I want to go to heaven. Let me be born again and again. But Lord, grant me this, that I may have love for Thee, and that for love's sake. A great landmark in the history of religion is here. The ideal of love for love's sake, work for work's sake, duty for duty's sake. And it is for the first time from the lips of the greatest of incarnations, Krishna, and for the first time in the history of humanity, upon the soil of India. The religions of fear and of temptations were gone forever, and in spite of the fear of hell and temptation of enjoyment in heaven, came the grandest of ideals, love for love's sake, duty for duty's sake, and work for work's sake.